Hello and welcome back to CBD Live. It is the first day of our 3-day European event. And it's time now to turn the spotlight on one of the cannabis industry's biggest successes to date internationally, Mile High Labs, which despite the setbacks of the pandemic, which, really did affect everywhere, every location around the world, from their business in Colorado to their business here in the UK. We really want to welcome Jody Gatica, who is VP of Quality and Regulatory at Mile High Labs. So welcome to you, Jody, and thank you for being here with CBD Live Europe. And we have some lovely slides that you're going to show us as we progress through this discussion. But I wonder if you could start off by giving me a little bit of information about the background of the company, because obviously we talk a lot about, specifically here in the UK, about kind of the quality of products and the history of products that comes from, Colorado, which has years on us as an industry. So tell us a little bit about Mile High Labs, how it came about, and what you're kind of doing.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me. I'll go ahead and start sharing my slides while we discuss this.
Yes, please, that would be great. There you go.
Okay, so Mile High, a little bit about us and our background, our history. As a company, we started out in 2016, and that's when we were founded by a gentleman by the name of Stephen Mueller. And at that time, we were a lot smaller scale than we are now. In 2017, they moved on to expanding from the lab scale work into more of an industrial scale facility in Loveland, Colorado. And again, these are the US-based sites. At that time, we were definitely increasing the focus on customers and what we could do for them to also support their business growth.
I think, Jody, sorry, just to interrupt you, I think the timeline's not showing, so I don't know if you want to slide show. It's just on the cover page right now.
No problem. I think it's the wrong or technical difficulty. Here we go.
There you go.
Better? Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so back to our timeline. We're in 2018 now, and with the passing of the 2018 Farm Bill, this really helped with Mile High's cultivation network expansion, really helped support the legitimacy of CBD. And in that year, another big area to highlight is Mile High Labs closed a very large Series A financing round, which is one of the biggest in the cannabis market history.
Wow. Do you know how much that was?
35 million.
Wow. And that was in what year?
2018.
So that, that was the year that things started to happen here with CBD on this side of the Atlantic, as we'd say. So that's, certainly a huge amount of investment to secure at such an early stage.
Yeah, I know they did have both private and industry investors, and that I think it's really a good insight as to the support that the CBD industry had then and continues to have as we evolve.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2019 is a really key year for our international locations. So we opened a location in Belfast in Northern Ireland to make sure that we were also supporting our customers with needs on the B2B delivery for ingredients and making sure that they had whatever ingredients they had in a timely manner. As you know, there's always issues with customs and delays in shipping. So the more prepared we are, the more prepared our customers can be.
And 2020 obviously was the year that we had, radical change around the world in terms of how we work and where we work and, whether we keep going or not. So tell me what 2020 was like for Mile High Labs.
Yeah, so 2020, we did a lot of work that was built on expansion into finished pharmaceutical goods. So in our facility in Broomfield, Colorado, we have over 400,000 square feet. we use some of that foot space, but we also have areas that we can expand into. And in 2020, we did have some impacts due to COVID, like you mentioned before, just like many companies. However, we did not let that slow us down. I believe you saw that customers were still looking for products. You saw some customers in certain instances looking for CBD a little bit more than they were before. So I know our customers were having more sales online than before because they couldn't get into the retail locations. So again, we're just making sure that we're supporting them as best as possible and pivoting with any type of constraints that we had from the changes in COVID.
Absolutely. So obviously that brings us up to current day 2021, and what kind of every CBD company every company that does some sort of a CBD infused food or beverage item has been affected by the novel foods regulations at an EU and UK level. So I think you're going to tell us a little bit about that later on. But if I could just ask you to kind of talk to us about your kind of various sites that you have around the world. One of your key sites is actually in Belfast, as you were saying, in Northern Ireland. So talk us through that and how crucial the various different operation sites are.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have an image here that shows where we are globally. And again, our message is always that we're existing to support our customers and the ambitions of our customers globally. And so that's why we positioned ourselves in the manner we have, making sure we have employees available to assist in different locations, available to speak to different people in different languages. And as you can see in Loveland, Colorado, that's our ingredient manufacturing. So all of our base ingredients that go into formulations are manufactured there. They move on to Broomfield for final product manufacturing, and that can be supplements, that can be cosmetics, any type of products along those lines. And then those can be shipped to Belfast, Northern Ireland, which we were talking about is a very key center for us. And that's our distribution center that we further distribute into anywhere in UK and Europe. So,
and obviously we have the Brexit protocol in place there as well. Not to get too political, but we have that link. Being in Northern Ireland, you have that link to the EU that should be, in theory, hassle-free as well, which is probably a big benefit for you.
Right. That's exactly why this is so beneficial to have Belfast, Northern Ireland located where they are. It's been very pivotal in keeping our business running. And again, we do have to think about any political impact that we have. So yeah, it's been helpful having them.
Great, thank you. And I suppose coming into the industry, when it was probably up and coming in Colorado to expand into the UK at the time, and obviously you spoke about securing the capital that was secured back in 2018. How has the company changed now? Like you're talking about CBD gummies, you're talking about cosmetics, you're talking about supplements, possibly even supplements that don't have CBD in them. So it's a massive kind of chain of events that you have going on. What are the kind of big initiatives that you're looking at now, which might give us a sign of where the industry is going?
Yeah, so some of our key initiatives have to do with our distribution plans. So any type of 3PL for our customers. And again, this is in support of a B2B model for customers who might not have that lined up. That's something that we're able to do and assist them with. And we can do that here at our Broomfield site, as well as our Belfast site for European and your UK-based customers.
Right.
And so you can see some of our capabilities here, just some images of our production areas. We do have analytical capabilities, manufacturing, warehousing, distribution. Any of what we're doing with 3PL and that initiative is definitely going through a request through our website or calling our representatives to get that moving. And these are some of the products that you spoke to. So the other initiative we have is definitely gummies. that is a very big initiative for us. We acquired a gummy manufacturer this year in 2021, and we've rapidly been moving to have everything qualified and in a manufacturing state now. So it does take some time to make sure that you're doing that in a compliant manner.
Of course, and I think that's something that's quite pivotal maybe for you, because we speak to a lot of brands specifically here in the UK who, really, had to tackle the novel foods compliance issue, and the kind of, I suppose maybe the kind of regulatory landscape that we didn't have to come up against yet before this moment in the CBD sector. And that might have been a lot, to a lot of brands, quite off-putting, to the point where I know some brands who just stopped doing any kind of CBD infused gummies or beverages altogether, just because they thought it might be the easier thing to do, and the more cost-effective option to do. So, it's interesting to see someone kind of reinvesting in gummies now as such an interesting kind of area for consumers.
Yeah, and I would definitely say it's one of the areas where it has been shown that there's still continued growth and it's happening at a rapid pace. So we do think that gummies is a great area to invest in, and not only for products that have CBD, but even for other supplements. You're just seeing that market area grow. And with novel foods, you know, it sure was something new and interesting, especially for our industry. A lot of requirements that maybe wouldn't have been expected were expected now, and having to navigate what some of those directives, what some of those requirements were, was difficult for some people. And the messages that were coming out might have been a little different based on the timing of them from the different government agencies. Throw in Brexit, and that complicated it a little bit more, because you first had people submitting everything through EFSA for the European Union. And then after Brexit, you also had to do that specifically for UK through the FSA.
And we should have mentioned at the beginning that your background, tell us a little bit about your background, because that was crucial in getting, the Mile High kind of product, which is, in a lot of products on the market here. Tell us about how you kind of approach that, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, so our approach was basically following a similar dossier submission that you would definitely see with dietary ingredient notifications and drug submissions. So my background has been in working with FDA as an investigator. That's kind of where I started my career. Gained a lot of experience working with regulations. That was basically my Bible back then. So learning that, and then moving on from there to work for Teva Pharmaceuticals, which was a global company, was very important for me in my career, so that I could understand how to interpret regulations for other countries, whether it be MHRA, whether it be COFEPRIS Mexico, and Visa in Brazil. You always had to understand who that product was being marketed to. So it's always at the forefront of your mind when you're looking at anything requiring submissions, requiring compliance, is what you're following, what standard, what regulations are required. So definitely part of this process was making sure that, all your T's are crossed, all your I's are dotted, anything that was requested that might not have been clear to the regulators. It's not really something that you argue, you just make sure that you provide the information in a clearer fashion, and engage with them. So that was another part that I don't know how many companies, I know a lot of companies were engaging with FSA through the process after Brexit, because they wanted to make sure that the messages they were receiving were exactly what they were hearing from FSA. So engaging with the regulatories is not something that anybody should be afraid of. They're always there to answer your questions. And typically they want to see you succeed, and they want to make sure that you're doing it compliantly.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us about the kind of the novel foods process for you then, and the toxicity study as well.
Awesome. So we had a toxicity study that we sponsored through an ALAC accredited laboratory who also practices good laboratory practices, called GLP. We first vetted out a few different companies to see where they landed, how they operated, and that's one of the things that's very important is you do that assessment of the laboratory before you engage in sponsoring that type of study. So we did decide to go through with that study, and it's basically the OECD guideline, and what that is required by Europe. And the US, we have a little bit of a different guideline under what's called the Red Book. But there's very different requirements that you would need to see in the EU. However, they can be applicable to the US. So it does support, other initiatives that we have, but definitely getting the toxicity data is one of the vital elements to showing the regulatory bodies that we are serious about our products. We are serious about ensuring the safety to the end user of all of these products. And I believe that our customers can then take that as kind of understanding that we're supporting them and their business initiatives as well.
Yeah, that's crucial. So what do you have on your next slide for us there?
Okay, so these are just our different products that we do help different customers market. We have the supplements, we have the topicals. We definitely go through what to expect from that. So we speak through our catalog with our different customers, and we make sure that they understand what we have is considered white label products. And then we can also work through R&D projects with them. So any type of research and development around any type of private label formulation they might be interested in. We work through labeling with them. So some people need more coaching, some people need less to understand what's required on their labeling for that finished product. And we do make sure that those are in a good place. We don't want anybody making any claims that are not allowed. We want to make sure that nobody's getting in any deep water with regulatory agencies on either party. We work through shelf life testing, so we do a lot of stability work under required conditions to show that that product's going to be shelf stable for whatever the expected expiration timing for that product would be. So we definitely outline what that kind of lead time looks like. It's a lot of work, so it's nice to understand that ahead of time. You're not walking into any of these projects blind.
I wonder if I could ask you from the products and the lead times that you've been able to show us here. I think that's really interesting for people who maybe might be at the start of their own kind of entrepreneurial journey, where they're maybe looking to get into CBD and start their own brand, or maybe launch one product and see how it does. What are you seeing is kind of more popular, the retail ready products or those which are more customizable?
I think it really depends on what the customer how they want to market their product. So if they take a product with, a 4-week lead time, that's something that's basically off the shelf, and where they're designing that to their brand and making sure that, they're reaching the customers and the niche areas they want to reach, whether it's a certain generation or, active folks, depending on what it is. With the private label, it definitely takes more time, but that's where you can kind of put your own mark on a product and differentiate yourself from other products. So I think it's easier to go with the white label, but it's definitely more unique to go private label.
Yeah, that makes sense. So just kind of moving on then, I suppose you spoke to me a little bit about supporting businesses and the initiatives to support the B2B model. And obviously novel foods does come into that, and guidance really comes into that as well. So what can you tell us about your formulation options and the needs of your partners here in the UK and the EU? Because obviously you're kind of dealing with EFSA at a European level and the FSA at a UK level. So tell us a little bit about supporting that B2B model a little bit further, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do make sure that we're following the regulations required by the EU or UK. And anytime a customer comes to us, one of the first questions is who is the intended market. That way we understand where we're going with that. So we go back to always going back to our initial mission of powering the world's novel consumer packaged goods. We're making sure that what we do is compliant, whether that's a food or a cosmetic, making sure that those ingredients are generally recognized as safe, not only in the US, but in the same manner for the EU, for the UK, their packaging as well. We keep our formulation options open and available as the needs of the EU and the UK market partners and their customers change. So, sometimes we don't hear about some of those unique changes until they come to us with requests. But regardless of their size, whether they're small or large, we do have teams set up that can help them with whatever their concerns are. Sometimes it's in formulations, sometimes it's in compliance, sometimes it's just in marketing.
Mm-hmm. And do you kind of get questions from people, from brands who, maybe due to funds or due to, kind of lack of knowledge or lack of expertise, don't really know that much about the compliance aspect or how important it might be to the end user or the overall brand itself? I mean, just how important are things like getting it right, getting the really little details right, and investing in, great quality products, or, base product materials, I should say, but also testing, because testing is expensive.
Yeah, testing definitely is expensive. But yes, we do get the questions from different angles, and it just goes back to everybody in this industry comes from a different path and a different background. And some people have had more experience in highly regulated industry, and some people have had less. So one of the things in guiding them definitely speaks to compliance and making sure they understand why compliance is important, not just saying you have to do this, but this is what we have to do because of XYZ. Sometimes we make recommendations, and sometimes we have areas that are set as far as these are the requirements if you want to work with us. And we do that because we are responsible, and we want to make sure that the partners that we have are also being responsible with the products that they're marketing.
So we have, I'm just going to take a couple of questions now, and there's a couple of ones here, a couple of questions here. One is anonymous and one is from Neil. So we'll start with Neil. I think something I mentioned actually, and it actually relates to an editorial that we did with our friends at Mile High Labs, who are based at the centre in Belfast in Northern Ireland. And I believe it was referencing a quote from one of the guys there, who was kind of looking towards the future of the company, I suppose, as a whole. And I know something that they mentioned was, gummies being a particular area of interest going forward, and not just CBD gummies. So I wonder, this question says, you said gummies not just for CBD, what other things can be made into gummies?
Yeah, so a lot of people look at having that vehicle using, instead of having a multivitamin, for instance. So instead of taking a capsule or a soft gel, something along those lines, a tablet, they want to take a different form of supplement, and gummies have been really popular. So you'll see different types of vitamin blends, and this can be anything that provides a form of energy with the creditable journals to back up what that can do for you. You might have something that provides you a better night's rest, such as melatonin. So there's a lot of different types of supplements, and in your area you would say food supplements, we say dietary supplements, but definitely those are the types of ingredients that we would be looking to formulating our products with, and making sure again that they definitely are shelf stable and tested appropriately.
Great, thank you for that. Our next question is kind of in reference to, I guess, the different locations around the world, so you might actually be the right person to answer this. Why are some US manufacturers not transparent with ingredients? They name soy, nano and have little idea of UKE numbers. Without transparency, compliance is hard. And I guess that relates back to maybe something you mentioned about, there being different regulations from different government agencies in different geographical locations.
Yeah, and I think it is definitely important to make sure that you're partnering with a company who is able to understand the regulations everywhere, at least where you're trying to market your product. Mentioning allergens, that is very important, and that is very different between the EU and the US. For the longest time, the US had what they called the big 8 allergens, and now it's 9. They added sesame this month, which was a really big undertaking. And in the EU, you have 14 different allergens. So if somebody's not cognizant of what's going into that product, it can definitely be non-compliant in the country you're marketing into. And then when it comes into, I guess, the ideas of nanoemulsion, I believe that there shouldn't be an issue sharing what your process aids are, what your materials are that are used for that product. That's the part of the transparency that I think is obligatory. The areas where I think people might be a little more standoffish, and maybe this is why they didn't provide that information. I can't speak for a specific company, but there's a lot of proprietary information going into the manufacturing process that people definitely try to keep to themselves and not let that outside their company.
You mentioned allergens there, and I know that's something that creeps into the kind of the mainstream news here quite a bit. And it's something that companies and restaurants and coffee shops have had to really kind of tighten their restrictions or their rules on, I suppose, and in the information that they provide to consumers. On the side of a sandwich now, you'll see it. It's much more transparent than it was. I'm just curious, as a side question, from your work with the FDA to your experience dealing with the MHRA in the UK and various different European authorities as well. Which side is a little more strict when it comes to what you have to put on your label, the US side or the European side?
So right now, I think they're pretty similar, but I do think the EU has a little bit of a different and stricter approach to labeling than the US does. It's always important to know that not one label will always meet the standards everywhere, so you have to make sure that you're doing a deep review of what you're including there. Some things might be as minute as the size of your font. Some might be specific warnings that you do have to include on your label. And you can't miss those things, especially things like allergens. That's one of the biggest, issues for recalls, for instance. But I think the companies have their own, the countries have their own requirements. But when it comes to CBD, that's kind of the other area where you have, this curveball as far as what's required for your labeling. And there's been a little bit of uncertainty on what you should have in there because, now in the EU and the UK, you're having that framework developed and you're getting that directive on what you should put on your labels. In the US, you still have the state patchwork of regulations, and they differ very much on what they want to see on the labeling. So in that way, I find it a lot easier in the EU and UK.
I imagine that this crossing state lines becomes a little bit trickier in terms of regulation, I suppose. We just had someone agree with you in our chat room who says, this is Ahmed, he says the EU is definitely more strict. In the US, you can even buy melatonin in Walmart, which you definitely cannot do here. I believe it is a prescription supplement here. So that is quite interesting as well to look at. And maybe we'll see something, happen with that in the UK or the EU kind of markets in the future with, other kind of substances such as, melatonin and adaptogens and psychedelics and all of the things that are coming down the line. We have another question here who refers to something in one of your slides, and it was about your geographic locations that you have centers in. Your slide mentions distribution in Australia, but I can't seem to find this information on the Mile High Labs website. Where is your Australian office? If you could tell us a little bit more about that for this customer or this viewer.
So we don't have an office in Australia, but we do work with partners who manufacture and sell products in Australia. That is another area where TGA they're the regulatory body there. They've recently rolled out some regulations for how they want to see CBD products marketed. So that's an area that we have worked with, and now we're pivoting with the new regulations on those requirements for veterinary-based products as well as human products.
Wow, okay, so you're looking into the animal market as well as the human market there. Oh, that's very interesting. So yeah, depending, I suppose, Neil, who asked that question, depending on where you are based, Neil, I would get in touch with your nearest kind of office if that makes sense to you. Or you can get in touch with Jody after this segment as well. Is there anything else you would like to tell us before we part ways this afternoon?
No, I don't have anything additional to add, but if there are any questions, reach out and I'll put you in contact with the correct person.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if anyone would like more information from Jody, you can always get in touch with ourselves here on the platform. You can get in touch with us directly. You can DM us on social media and we will be happy to put you in touch. Thank you so much, Jody, for your time. And we look forward to hearing more from Mile High Labs in the future.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.